The ocean has this elemental attraction to us all. Having ridden more waves than most on this planet, I've always felt that wave riding skills may help with a philosophy of riding life's waves. I've wondered whether there was a way to write a simple book, distilling what I've learned that can help others to find their inner power, to no longer feel powerless, and learn to ride that powerful wave rather than be swept away by it.
Shaun Tomson, welcome.
It is so great to be back in the lucky country.
Well, that's very nice to hear. Some people describe it as the lucky country still, others not so much, but you know, this is the world we live in, isn't it? It's a world that is in flux. There are so many challenges, there are so many changes, there are questions about history, but I've got to say, you're the surfer, you paddled out into the waves and you just sat there and you rode the rhythm. And now you've got the answer for the rest of us, haven't you?
I don't have the answer, but I tell you what, I have some really interesting insight. Through COVID, from February 20 till now, I've spoken to maybe 150,000 people in all walks of life, PTSD survivors, drug rehabs, prisons, the hottest companies in the history of the world. In fact, some companies, CEOs have told me, we're the hottest growing and fastest growing company in the history of the world. Data companies, AI companies, defense companies, consumer goods companies, automotive companies. And I asked them, give me one word that describes how you're feeling. And I created an instantaneous word cloud. So the 4 words have been stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection, which actually creates the stress, anxiety, and the depression. So it's been really unique to see the mindset, and then I have a little method and a little system of perhaps changing a perspective and then using this little intervention code to change a mindset. So I work with all sorts of companies, and it's the most satisfying work I've ever done. I mean, I loved being a pro surfer. I competed on the tour for 16 years. I won 19 major pro events, won contests everywhere in the world except Australia. I got second in every bloody event here. I couldn't beat the Aussies. Simon Anderson, Mark Richards, Rabbit Bartholomew, they just always got me. Tom Carroll, Mark Okalupa, I mean, those guys. So what I do now, it's just so fulfilling. And like you say, I'm in a flow, I'm riding a wave, and the metaphor is so, I think, aligned to where people are at right now.
Yeah, you talk a lot about purpose. The code that you designed is all about purpose. And it seems that the world is just so keen on tapping into something that is bigger than themselves, that is bigger than a profit, that is bigger than the way things have always been done. And it's kind of challenging the status quo. So maybe tell us a little bit about the code and how that led into the surfer and the sage.
So a number of years ago, a friend said to me, your adopted home break of Rincon, it's a very famous wave, is having a severe environmental challenge. He said, it's a massive problem, it's a $30 million problem. He said, I want you to help me fix it, you've got a $100 budget. I went, what can I do? He said, well, I'm bringing a group of children down to the beach, and I'm bringing the local media down, the local water board officials, all the people that can really make a difference, but I want you to empower the kids. So that night I went home and I wrote 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. I wrote down the fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life, not how to be the #1 surfer in the world, but about courage, about camaraderie, integrity, honor, bravery, persistence, resilience. And I wrote 12 lines, 105 words, and I printed them on a little plastic card, and I gave them out to the children. And the children loved them, and it turned into a groundswell, and ultimately we got the environmental problem solved. We had to do a bond measure and raised about $30 million to solve the problem. But the cards and the code took on a life of their own. And then I wrote a book about it called Surfer's Code, which was an exploration of the 12 chapters. And then I lost my beautiful son, Matthew, 15 and a half years old. I lost him to a poor decision. You heard about this game at school called the choking game. All the kids at school wore school ties. And he played the game and it killed him. And my life and my wife's life came to a complete grinding halt. And for many months, I questioned who I was, what's my fundamental purpose, where am I going, what am I doing? And I went back to this code that I'd written for these children. I will always paddle back out. I'll realize that all surfers are joined by one ocean. These simple sort of homespun words. And I started speaking at schools about the code. And then at one of the schools, I said to the kids, Surfer's Code's my code. I wrote it. 12 lines, 105 words. I wrote it in 15 minutes. What about your code? I think this is a way you can find your purpose. This is a way you can find your power. So the first school I spoke to was 80 kids, 12 lines. I got about 960 lines of code back. And the very first line of code I got back was, I will be myself. Wow, those words were just so inspiring and empowering to me. I will be myself. This young kid wasn't going to be pushed around. She wasn't going to be victimized. She wasn't going to be able to, she was just going to use her own power and be herself. And then the other lines these kids wrote were so, so beautiful and so powerful. So what I did is I found out my co-author Patrick Moser, who we wrote Surfer's Code together. I said, we've got to write another book. And this book is going to be a framework for positive decision making, both for kids and for adults, but primarily for kids to help them find purpose and power. And perhaps when that decision comes down, bearing down on them like a train, they might just think twice and make a positive decision based on this empowerment of the code. So after that, we released my second book called The Code, and it became really popular. And then the people would phone me up and say, hey, Shaun, why don't you come and speak about the code? And it started out with schools and universities. And then I started getting invited to leadership conferences. I mean, I'd speak with Malcolm Gladwell and Richard Branson. I'd open the conference and then there'd be Gladwell and then Branson. And I'm going, yeah, you know, they're talking about their entrepreneurial success and their award-winning books. I'm talking about a code, baby, 12 lines. Every line beginning with I will, a super simple method of self-empowerment. And I've come to understand that words have power, and the words that have the most power of all, they're not Nelson Mandela's words, they're not Martin Luther King's words, they're not Winston Churchill's words, they're our words. So I just supply a framework. And kids, university students, business dudes, they put their words into it and they find their path. And in the context of the turbulence and disruption that we've all been experiencing over the last 26 months, it's really a simple way forward from the dark to the light. And my latest book, The Surfer and the Sage, which we just released, is about making that transition. 18 chapters. All my other books have had 12, but this book's got 18 because 18 has spiritual significance. In Hebrew, every letter has a numeric. 18 because chai, the word for life, is 18. So there's 18 chapters, and every chapter is about the duality of life, hope and despair, but with the negative first, so despair and hope, powerlessness and empowered. So the book is just a little guide, and all my books are a guide or a perspective. I don't believe in prescriptions, and it's been well received. It was a labor of love. My co-author is a poet, philosopher, Pulitzer nominated guy. You know, he sold millions and millions of books, and it was wonderful to do this collaboration together to bring kind of the metaphorical spirituality of surfing together with his spirituality and create this little book that's there to just help people through this disruption. So,
you know, when you were a teenage kid growing up in South Africa, you had the surfing world ahead of you. The sport was moving from amateurism to professionalism, and you were at the forefront of that. Did you imagine life beyond surfing? And what was there of life beyond paddling out the back, catching a wave, riding one of the best tubes mankind has ever seen? What was beyond that? And how did you make that transition? Because so many people today, I think, struggle with that transition, and the transition of what we knew yesterday to the world has suddenly become different today.
You know, when I started, you know, I come from a Jewish background. I was going to be a professional, but it was going to be lawyer or accountant. Pro surfer was not part of the movie. There was no such thing as being a pro surfer. But I had this amazing love and passion for surfing. And then I joined up with this band of crazy dudes from Australia, Robert Bartholomew, Mark Richards, Ian Cairns, Simon Anderson, Peter Townend, and then some guys from Hawaii. And together we created this dream because we loved surfing and like, how can we perpetuate our lifestyle? You know, we were making a couple of $100 a month. We had no money, and I was lucky my dad supported me. But and for us, like getting a free surfboard, that was a big deal. But we had a vision, and I got to say that Robert Bartholomew was an amazing visionary, as was Ian Cairns and Peter Town and MR, myself, Simon. We just sort of like went along in their slipstream. But I think together we created this. Man, we created this opportunity today for young guys and young girls to make millions and millions of dollars. We have Stephanie Gilmore just won the world title, Australia 8 times world champ, and she's making millions of dollars. And it's just so wonderful to see these young athletes surfing and inspiring people, and then getting paid for this inspiration. So it's been an amazing ride, and you know, one of the things that I've seen in athletics is that the fundamental role, I think, for an athlete is to inspire. The fundamental role for a leader is to inspire as well. I went back to grad school. I was the oldest dude at grad school. I went back and did a Master of Science in Leadership because I wanted to learn more about influence. That's my field now. And that's the fundamental role of a leader, to influence and to inspire. And an athlete does the same thing. So athletes in their own way are leaders. They supply us with inspiration. You know, when you've got this great athlete, he just makes us see life differently, gives us this juice, gives us this love, not only for winning, but just love for the art form. But the meaning of life can be distilled into 2 sentences. One is, I will be better. We have this genetic compulsion. We want to be better. We want to be better. And the second line is, I will help others be better. That's it. That's life. In many different words and in many different ways, but that's who we are as humans. And it's wonderful for me to have seen this and to help people see it. This is what we really are at our core. Want to be better, want to help others be better. One word takeaway. You know, the biggest word is hope. So I love doing this, Trace. I love it because I lost my son, I lost my hope. When I do this, I get it back.
It's very powerful, Shaun, and it comes down to energy, doesn't it? And on this planet, we all share the energy that each other gives. Mm-hmm. We sometimes get negative energy, we sometimes get positive energy.
Totally.
The work you're doing is all aimed at positive energy and turning the negative energy into something positive.
Absolutely.
It's like getting the flower out of the ground. But how much of that do you think, and were you able to tap into this? Because there is a saying, only a surfer knows the feeling. And is that because it's one ocean effectively that surrounds this planet? And when you're out there, you're vulnerable. You've got to tap into something that is going to help you survive that moment. Is that what taught you? Is that where this comes from deep inside, because of that ability to say the ocean can throw up anything and I'm here and I have to make the most of it?
Yeah, you know, the ocean's been an incredible teacher for me. I mean, certainly I've learned so much from my mother and my father, my basic values. But certainly when you sit out there and you wait for a wave and you're sitting and you're waiting and you've got guys paddling around you and you're waiting, it certainly
not
teaches
just guys
you.
And girls and sharks.
Sharks too, yeah. I mean, my father was nearly killed by a shark. So, I mean, I've always had this sort of...
He had an ambition of being an Olympic swimmer, didn't he?
Yeah, he was, I mean, he had a good shot at a gold in the 1948 Olympics and then was attacked while riding on his little wooden surfboard. I think it's one of the first recorded attacks on a surfer ever in South Beach in Durban. But like from my dad, he taught me how to swim and surf 100 meters away from where he'd been attacked. So in one of the lines of the surface code I write, I will never turn my back on the ocean, which is a Hawaiian actually term. And you know, he showed me through his example that even though he'd had his career and life changed by that shark attack, he still had this great love for the water. So surfing teaches you, never to turn your back on the ocean. It teaches you about humility. It teaches you about perseverance and resilience. It teaches you about hope. I write, I will know there will always be another wave. This concept of hopefulness and this concept of optimism. It teaches you about honor. The last line of the surface code is, I will honor the sport of kings. So for me, surfing has taught me fundamental lessons. I'm so grateful. And as surfers, we can all get in touch with that connectivity and spirituality if we just sometimes look below the surface. Surfing's not all about just getting the next wave, just getting the next wave. Sometimes there's that moment of just waiting, introspection, thought, caring for the ocean, caring for others. And then with all that, I think, awareness, maybe comes a acute sense of belonging. Belonging, yeah. It's like Nat Young, one of the greatest Australian surfers of all time, along with Midget and Wayne Lynch from that period. He said that all surfers are a tribe, and in some ways I agree with him. There's this wonderful tribal element to surfing, and this wonderful, almost like ancient knowledge. You know, in the area where I now live in Santa Barbara, the indigenous tribe was called the Chumash that lived there. The oldest human remains are found in my area 13,500 years ago. And right on the beach is this beautiful memorial, and my late son Matthew and I would often go up to the memorial, and you leave an offering. It's right on the beach at my favorite spot. It's called Shalawameda, and it has these words: the sacredness of the land lies in the mind of its people. This land is dedicated to the spirit and memory of the ancestors and their children. It's amazing words, and it ties us back to this connectivity to the land, to the past, to the present, and to place. And my place has been in the sea. And whenever I go up and look at the memorial, and it's very close to the water, it's only 50 meters away from the water, I know I'm in this place where I should be.
Shaun Tomson, it's been wonderful sharing that energy, author of Surfer and the Sage and The Code. You've given the world something very special on that, Shaun, and I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you.